Good morning. Distinguished guests, school board members, community members, students, teachers, administrators, faculty and staff, and all veterans here today. Welcome to Veterans Day 2014. With no further ado, we'll go ahead and get to the presentation. Start with the presentation by presenting you a video. Enjoy.
December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Today, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
Soldiers both old and new march down city streets. Flags hang from homes, businesses, and even car antennas. Ceremonies remember those who dutifully served our nation. It's Veterans Day, or Remembrance Day as it's known in much of the world, a time to honor members of the armed forces. It all began in a railroad car with the document to end the war to end all wars. World War I shocked the nation with its unprecedented toll of human life. On the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, all was quiet on the Western Front. The fighting had ended. Germany agreed to sign an armistice. A year later, President Woodrow Wilson decreed that America should have a moment of silence at 11 o'clock to remember the armistice and embrace the peace. In 1938, Congress made it a legal holiday, giving the people a day off from work. Then, in 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces in World War II, officially changed U.S. Armistice Day to Veterans Day, honoring those who served in all American wars. In 1971, Congress moved Veterans Day to the fourth Monday in October, giving Americans a 3-day weekend, but most Americans rejected this idea because of the strong historical significance of November 11th. So, in 1975, President Henry Ford reversed the law, returning it back to its rightful day. Veterans Day started off as a celebration of peace and has now evolved to a celebration of those who fought for that peace. We will begin our Veterans Day observation today with some information about our national anthem. The words to the Star-Spangled Banner were written by Francis Scott Key, who was inspired by the sight of the flag of the United States waving proudly over Fort McHenry on the morning after a British naval bombardment during the War of 1812. Coupled with the defeat of the British by American forces under General Andrew Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans, the Battle of Baltimore marked the turning point of this sometimes forgotten war in United States history. Please stand for the presentation of the colors by the Kaufman County Young Marines, sponsored by the Marine Corps League of Terrell, Detachment 1338, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Captain Francis Luce of the United States Army. The pledge will be followed by the national anthem performed by soloist Angela Randolph, accompanied by the Terrell High School Jazz Band.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the lands of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. There are many great traditions associated with Veterans Day, and one of the very best is the tradition of the Armed Forces Medley, featuring anthems of each branch of the United States military. The Armed Forces Medley will now be performed by the Terrell High School Jazz Band and the Terrell High School Choir. We invite all U.S. military veterans and those currently serving on active duty to stand when your song, honoring your branch of service, is played.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep our honor clean. We are proud to claim the title of the United States Marines. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. Then it's hi, hi, hey, the army's on its way. Shout out your numbers loud and strong.
2, 3.
For wherever you go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. Semper Paratus is our guide, our fame, our glory too. To fight, to save, or fight and die, I Coast Guard, we are for you. Off we go into the wild blue yonder, climbing high into the sun. Here they come, swimming to meet our thunder, and a boys give her the gun.
Give her the gun now.
Down we dive, fighting our fame from under. Off in one heck of a roar. We live in fame, we go down in flame. Hey, nothing will stop the USA flag. Anchors away, my boys. Anchors away. Until we meet once more, here's wishing you a happy voyage home.
Have you ever wondered what it takes to be in the United States Army? What training is required? What skills are needed? What it's really like? Sergeant First Class Devin Marcel knows very well what it's like. He joined the United States military in August of 2000. He entered the Army Ranger School in a class of 269 and was one of only 17 who graduated. He has been deployed 5 times, 3 times in Afghanistan and 2 times in Iraq. Sergeant Marceau has also been awarded the Bronze Star for bravery in a combat zone. The following video will show some of the training that is required to be a soldier in the U.S. military. After the video, Sergeant First Class Devin Marceau will share a few of his experiences as a proud member of the United States Army.
Ladies and gentlemen, veterans, students, and faculty of Terrell ISD, thank you very much for having me here today. It is an honor to be in the presence of so many veterans that came before me and afforded me the opportunity to serve my country. Without your sacrifices, mine would not have been possible. Let's talk about the word hero. Hero is a word that you hear very frequently on Veterans Day. The history books are filled with heroes, some military, some not. The word hero means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what I'd like to do today is take about 5 minutes of your time and tell you the story of two people who I consider to be true American heroes. My last deployment was in 2009. I was deployed to Afghanistan to provide support and security for an agribusiness development team. Now, what does that mean? The state of Texas brought in a bunch of soldiers that had expertise in areas such as soil management, animal husbandry, building infrastructure, basically a bunch of Texas A&M graduates. So picture this, a bunch of US Army Rangers protecting a bunch of Aggies. We were tasked with providing service and support to the Afghan citizens, doing projects such as digging wells, building veterinary clinics, medical facilities, etc. We were there to win hearts and minds. While we were there, I applied for a full-time position within the Texas Army National Guard. And the way that works is you go in front of a panel or in front of a board. So you go in front of a room full of very high-ranking, important people and have them grill you on subjects for about 30 minutes. Overall, it's a pretty terrifying experience. The people that I competed against were some of the best. Great young Army Rangers with knowledge that was greater than or equal to mine. Well, the people that I was competing against had the opportunity to appear for the interview in person. I applied from 3,500 miles away on a telephone in the mountains of Afghanistan. It was a total disaster. I couldn't understand them, they couldn't understand me, and I walked away from that day knowing that the job wasn't mine. I knew it in my heart, it was just time to move on. Next slide, please. The deployment carried on with various levels of boredom and excitement, like most of them do. We had one last long mission that we needed to carry out in the mountains of central Afghanistan. We were going to be in the mountains for about 3 weeks, carrying out our dual role of providing service and support for the Afghan citizens while hunting for the bad guys at the same time. At the end of the 3 weeks, the mission was a total and undeniable success. All we had to do was make it back home. The first several hours of the trip was easy going. However, we knew we had to make it through one last mountain pass that was filled with enemy fighters. It was terrain that was truly held by the Taliban. We chose to stop in a dry lake bed and send one last radio communication back to our home base, basically to let them know what we were doing and that we were about to head through the mountain pass. During that communication, we received a radio transmission from our home base. It said Shiner 7, which was home base's call sign. You see, in the military, everybody has a call sign, and ours was Shiner. So Shiner 7, home base, tells Shiner 1, which was me, congratulations. I'd gotten the job of my dreams. And it's a job that has me standing in front of you here today. It was the highest of highs, knowing that me and my family would be financially stable. With a full heart, we got in our vehicles and started the last leg of our journey through the mountains. It was uneventful, just like we hoped it would be. We knew we were minutes from our first hot meal and hot shower in 3 weeks. Then the unthinkable happened. We suffered an organized and catastrophic attack. A roadside bomb detonated under their vehicle. I'm sorry. Splitting it in half. Wounding 2. And killing two of my brothers in arms. It was the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. Staff Sergeant Christopher Stotts of Fredericksburg, Texas, killed in action October 16th, 2009. You see, Chris was a consummate soldier. He was quoted in an interview prior to us going overseas that his entire goal was to help the Afghan citizens become more self-sufficient. He truly cared. Chris was set to leave service about 1 month after we returned home from Afghanistan. He had done his part, and it was time to focus on what lay ahead. He left behind his loving wife, his parents, his brother, and his sister. Sergeant Anthony Gabriel Green of Yorktown, Texas, killed in action October 16, 2009. The gentle giant that everybody called Gabe. Gabe was a veteran of the Iraq War, where he had been awarded a Purple Heart for being wounded in action. His wounds were bad enough to where Gabe was offered disability and a desk job to ride out his time, but that wasn't Gabe. Gabe had a purpose and a mission, and he was intent on seeing it carried out, and he died giving his life for that mission. So what is it? What is it that makes Gabe and Chris heroes? Are they heroes because they died serving their country? No, they're heroes because they lived. They're heroes because they decided that protecting American and Afghan citizens was more important than their own lives. There's no more noble way to go than that. Greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for a friend. Again, thank you so much for having me. It has been an honor, and God bless.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
The Terrell community has a long and distinguished history regarding our sons and daughters and the sacrifices they and their families endured while serving in the U.S. military. Many of those who served, as Abraham Lincoln stated in his Gettysburg Address, gave the last full measure of devotion. The Memorial Plaza, located on Moore Avenue near the Chamber of Commerce building, bears witness to Terrell soldiers who died in service to our great country. Listed among the many who are honored, there are 5 who gave their lives protecting our freedom in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are our most recent fallen heroes. We would like to share some of the personal side of life for one of those soldiers this morning, Specialist Joseph Lewis.
If you're reading this,
he was very outgoing. He was very goofy. He had a great personality. People liked him automatically. He had tons of friends. He liked to do everything. He always wanted to be in the Army.
and war was just a game we played when we were kids.
My dad was in the military. My husband was in the military, and they were both in the cavalry. And so he saw the Desert Storm, and he had gone to the base with my dad and my husband at some of the reunions. So he just really liked the whole concept.
In that open field out on the edge of town.
At the time, it was right after 9/11, and he just felt like he wanted to serve. And so I wasn't really thrilled about him joining, really didn't want him to. So he went to TVCC for a semester and decided that just wasn't for him. He just really wanted to join, so he did. He went to Fort Knox, and then after he got his basic training done, then he was stationed in Korea for about 14 months.
Halfway around the world, I won't be there to see the birth of our little girl. I hope she looks like you. I hope she fights like me.
It's difficult to lose a child in any way, but it's difficult to lose them in the military because you share them with everyone else. And so he's not just mine, it's everybody's.
In that open field out on the edge of town. And oh, my soul, it's where my mom always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, I'm already home.
This has always been our hometown. Our community has always been patriotic and very loving to everyone. When you lose a soldier and they know that they've made that ultimate sacrifice, they go way out of their way to make sure that that person is honored, not just at the time of their death, but continually, because that's what we do.
Where soldiers live in peace and angels sing amazing grace. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town.
He was an honest person, and that he wanted to go, and that it was his choice. And he was a hero.
If you're reading this, I'm already home.
have to be afraid of what you want. There's an answer if you reach into your soul, and the sorrow that you know will melt away. And then a hero comes along with strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside, and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, just look inside you and be strong, and you'll finally see the truth, and that a hero lies in you. It's a long road when you face the world alone. No one reaches out a hand for you to hold, but you can find love if you search within yourself, and the emptiness you felt will disappear. And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside, and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, just look inside you and be strong, and you'll finally see the truth, and that a hero lies in you. Lord, no, dreams are hard to follow, but don't let anyone tear them away. Just hold on and hold on and hold on. There will be tomorrow, and in time we'll find the way. And then a hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside, and you know you can survive. So when you feel like hope is gone, just look inside you and be strong, and you'll finally see the truth, and that a hero lies in you. And that a hero lies in you.
Taps is a musical piece performed at dusk, at flag ceremonies, and at military funerals. This includes the 2,500 military wreath ceremonies conducted every year at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington Cemetery near Washington, D.C. Taps became a standard component for U.S. military funerals in 1891. In honor of all U.S. military servicemen and women who gave their lives in the service of our great country, please stand for the playing of Taps, to be performed by Terrell High School band member Cody Purcell. Taps will be followed by a moment of silence. Please stand. Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated.
Our featured speaker today is a man who has a compelling story to tell. As a teenager, he was the rebellious son of a Baptist minister who walked the streets of McLeansboro, Illinois, in violent protest to all authority in his home and in his school. He was a born fighter. Every inch of his life was contested. To escape the world around him, he joined the United States Marine Corps in 1969. After completing basic training, he was ordered to join the war effort in Southeast Asia near Quang Nam Province in Vietnam. The assignment given to him and his men was minesweeping. Walking slowly and deliberately, they hunted for landmines left by the Viet Cong in landscapes often marked with pits and craters, some of them 20 feet wide and 6 to 7 feet deep. Many times they carried out their orders in clearings with only knee-deep grass for cover, leaving them dangerously exposed to enemy fire. The Marine motto is Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. Marines have another saying, once a Marine, always a Marine. There are no former Marines. Yes, this man has a compelling story. Please welcome United States Marine Tim Lee.
All right, thank you so very much for that introduction, and this has been outstanding. What I want to do is load up this band and singers and all that had anything to do with this morning's program and take them to a whole bunch of high schools all over America, and we could help America out. It's a great presentation, and I appreciate being a part of it. My youngest daughter is here, Amber. Stand up back over here, honey, let the people meet you. This is my daughter, Amber. Make her feel welcome today. And my wife and I, Con, I've been married for 42 years. We travel somewhere across America every week, 50 weeks a year, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week. And we had just got back from Philadelphia, and so she's taking the day off, and Amber's helping assisting me today. We leave here, we go over to the Saxe Chamber of Commerce and do a veterans program there, and then our whole week is full. But I am so honored to be here today. We did a memorial event at the stadium earlier this morning, and that was a very impressive event, and we're grateful for this Terrell High School, the city of Terrell, and all those who have participated and been a part of these days' events. And this is the way that you remember. This is why you have a Veterans Day program. I had a teenager to tweet me, send me a tweet on my Twitter account. If you have a Twitter account, I'm at Marine Tim Lee. I tell people all the time, though, that if you don't love God and you don't love America, you probably won't enjoy following me on Twitter. I didn't go 10,000 miles away from home, give 2 legs for my country to come back here and be politically correct while America is being destroyed. And so, why is there a need for such a day as this? And this young 17-year-old boy from Marysville, Tennessee, Sawyer DiMaggio, wrote me these words. He said, "It astounds me as just a teen to see the lack of respect shown to veterans who risk everything to defend us." I thought that was profound. Coming from a teenager this morning, the first words my wife said to me was, "Happy Veterans Day." And then on the way over to Terrell, we live in Rowlett, and on the way over this morning, I got a call from my 90-year-old mother wishing me a happy Veterans Day. My dad went to heaven 5 years ago. He was a veteran, so I served in World War II, and my hero. And then my oldest granddaughter tweeted me a little while ago, said, "I'm thanking my papa for serving and giving his legs for our country. I love you so much, Papa. And so those are the kind of things why we have this day, and honor those. And we had all the men and women of the military stand. I noticed there wasn't quite as many Marines as there was the other branch, but you got to remember it don't take as many either. All right, thank you. And we had a big day yesterday for all the Marines, and some ways for the Marines it's kind of hard to understand. You got to be a part of that family to be able to really get it and understand. But yesterday was our birthday, 239th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. So happy birthday to all of the Marines that are here today. And this morning, I'm going to give a little bit of my story here in just a few moments. I want to talk to you about wars that I can remember. We talked about the beginning of Armistice Day and then how it turned into Veterans Day. And of course, we have Memorial Day, and that is specifically a day that's set aside for those that died, for those who actually gave their lives. And this day, Veterans Day, is primarily for those who are still living and who have served in our military. But Tom Brokaw called my dad's generation, the World War II generation, the greatest generation. And on the very day that Grandma and Grandpa Lee took my dad to the train station as just a young, a 19-year-old boy to go to war, on that very day they received word that their oldest son, my dad's older brother Emerson, had been killed over Italy. And can you imagine a mom and a dad taking their next oldest son to go to war, and they just found out that their oldest son had been killed. And so it's called the greatest generation. And such sacrifices were made. Over 16 million Americans served in that war, and over 407,000 Americans gave their lives. 407,000 Americans died. And then we had another war. It was called the Korean War. And something seemed to happen. It seemed like it came to be a indecisive war, that there was actually no winner. There came to be a North Korea and a South Korea. And we left a presence of Americans today. There are over 35,000 Americans still serving in South Korea as a buffer between them and the barbarian that leads the people there in North Korea. But over 34,000 Americans were killed in Korea, and 1,789,000 Americans served. But something else happened. They were forgotten. Oftentimes, the Korean War is called the Forgotten War. And why is that? Because it was that indecisive of not having an actual win. And when my father and the World War II veterans came back, there were parades, there were huge parades, there were welcoming ceremonies, there were all kinds of activities to make them aware that a nation was appreciative and grateful and thankful for the sacrifice that they had given to this country. But when our Korean veterans came back, there were no parades. There were no welcoming committees. They actually just came back and went down to the factory and got a job and paid their taxes, got married and raised their family, and truthfully, they didn't really expect that much, and they had just done their duty. But then something else happened. My war came. The Vietnam War. It's called oftentimes an unpopular war, but really no war is ever really popular. But the Vietnam War came, and we didn't have enough men to fight in that war, and so there was a draft that was instituted. It was very unpopular, and many draft dodgers fled to Canada and other parts of the world. But many did what their country asked them to do. They put on the uniform of this country, and they went to a little place called South Vietnam in Southeast Asia. South Vietnam was free. North Vietnam was communist, and the North Vietnamese were trying to overthrow the South Vietnamese, and the Chinese and the Soviet Union at that time was trying to help the North Vietnamese overthrow South Vietnam. And we had given our word to a little band of people in South Vietnam that we would defend them, and we would help them to remain free. and over 58,000 Americans died, and tens of thousands of others were wounded. There's something even more terrible than forgetting the veterans. When the Vietnam veterans came back from Vietnam to America, there was something else that had happened. America had an ugly part of its history. Oftentimes, our veterans were spit upon. They were called baby killers, oftentimes had bags of urine thrown at them. And they were even told by their superiors not to wear the uniform in public. They would be punished if they did. It was a horrible time. There were no welcoming parties. There were no thank yous. There's nobody who said, welcome home. Thank you for serving our country. And oftentimes I'm asked, is there anything good that came out of Vietnam? Well, I could tell you a lot of good things if I had the time this morning, but I can tell you specifically that from that we learned a lesson. And when our men and women went to fight in the Gulf Wars and in Iraq and Afghanistan, we learned once again how to say thank you. We learned once again how to be appreciative and to honor those who serve. And since those days, everywhere I go, I have strangers come up to me, a 64-year-old Vietnam veteran, and tell me, welcome home. After all those years, those are still sweet words to have people come and tell me that. Welcome home. America learned a valuable lesson. And I want to encourage you, as you're doing here today, to honor those who are willing to put on the uniform. And not everyone can go serve, but those that are willing to, everyone that is serving in our military today, every single person is there voluntarily. Not a one of them was drafted. They were there because they wanted to be. And boy, if there's ever a time for us to appreciate those kind of people, it's today. We still have men and women that are fighting in Afghanistan, and now we just yesterday deployed another 1,500 troops back in Iraq. And we cannot forget these people who are willing to put on this uniform. I was raised in a rural area of southern Illinois, known for its farmland and its coal mines. I was raised in a pastor's home. My dad was a Southern Baptist pastor for almost 60 years, and my mother a godly woman. I was raised in a great home, not a perfect home, but a great home. And I, early in my life, became a Christian. But then as a teenager, I began to get with the wrong crowd. I began to do the wrong things, and I began to mess up my life. And bad things began to happen to me. I was playing sports in high school, football and basketball and baseball. I ran track and field. I set track records in the hurdles and in the long jump. I found out the other day that my record in the hurdles at McLeansboro Township High School still stands all these years later. And guess what? They're not going to break it. They don't run the high hurdles anymore, so it's still there. But then I got out of high school, I graduated, and started going to college the day, working nights, but my life was still so messed up. I was really, really shipwrecked. And you ended up getting kicked out of college. I ended up getting fired from my job. My life was messed up. And one day walking down the street in my hometown, I saw the sign that said the Marines are looking for a few good men. And I didn't know who the rest of them were, but I went into that recruiter's office and I told them I found at least one of what they were looking for. And I joined the Marine Corps. Now, young people, to be real frank with you, I was tired of living at home. I wanted to change. I wanted something different. I was tired of being told what time to go to bed and what time to get out of bed and how to get my hair cut, what I could do and could not do, so I joined the Marine Corps. It wasn't the most intelligent thing I ever did. They sent me to Paris Island, South Carolina, and I met that guy they called drill instructor. I was there less than 24 hours when I decided I didn't like him and he didn't like me. But the reason I didn't like him was because he was in authority. But I was soon to discover that no matter where I would ever go in this life, there would always be authority. With God being the supreme in all authority. I ended up being sent to Vietnam. And on March the 8th, 1971, at 1:30 in the afternoon, leading my men on a mine sweep, I stepped on a 60-pound mine. It blew me several feet into the air. It ripped both of my legs off of my body. I should have been killed instantly. It was a big enough mine to destroy a Jeep. In the midst of all the confusion, in the midst of my hurt and my pain, simultaneously as I had stepped on a mine, a Korean Marine, a ROK Marine who was serving with us, stepped on a mine at the identical same time and blew one of his legs off. Our Caterpillar that was helping us build a road for the South Vietnamese had put his blade down on mine. We had entered a major minefield. And that day, in the midst of my hurt, in the midst of all the commotion, not knowing for sure that we weren't under attack and that things were not even more serious than they might have seemed, I looked up that day and my head was laying in the lap of a black Marine. Corporal Lee Gore, he and I flew to Nam, the same plane. We were the best of friends. Now, he was a Christian. He was living for God. I was running from God. And that day with my head in his lap, I begged God to let me live. Young people, I wanted to live. I wanted to live so bad. Let me tell you a little parallel story. There's a guy by the name of Ron. He's a little bit older than myself. He was a Marine too, but he was raised in similar conditions, a very strong, patriotic, and conservative home in New York, me being raised in that kind of home in Illinois. And he ended up in high school, and a Marine recruiter coming to his school, and on that day he decided he wanted to be a Marine. He was not drafted into the Marines, he joined the Marines, as did I. And he ended up in Vietnam. In his first tour of duty, something tragic happened. He accidentally shot one of his own Marines and killed him. He was devastated. They sent him home, then they sent him back to Vietnam for a second tour of duty, and something else tragic happened. He was shot. He was shot in the ankle, and he was shot in his spine, and he was paralyzed, and he was put in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He spent months and months and months and months and months in a hospital in New York, where he became very angry. He became very bitter. He shook his fist at God. He shook his fist at his own mother. He was so mad. He was so angry. He turned to drugs and he turned to alcohol to try to find relief for the pain in his life. I spent months and months and months and months in a hospital in Philadelphia. Operation after operation after operation. But let me tell you something. Amber's sitting here this morning. If my other two children were here today, my 6 grandchildren, my wife, if my 90-year-old mother was here, any of my lifelong friends that would be here today, every one of them would tell you, none of them ever at one time have ever seen me bitter or angry about what happened to me on March the 8th, 1971. You know why? Because I wanted to live. I wanted to live so bad. My body should have been blown to 1,000 different pieces. But God had spared my life. And I had a couple young doctors in the hospital. Their answer to everything was cut, 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 and they were getting ready to cut my right hip off, and they told me that I would never be able to sit up. I'd have to lay down on my stomach and my back for the rest of my life. And when they told me that, I didn't get angry, didn't get bitter, but I can tell you, I went to the bottom of the barrel. And my dad called him and asked him not to do that surgery. These are the days when we didn't have private rooms in the hospital. We didn't have semi-private rooms. We were on a ward, Ward 1A in Philadelphia Naval Hospital. At any given time, 40 to 50 Marines, every one of us were amputees from Vietnam. I saw the bitterness. I saw the anger. There was no privacy, or maybe a little thin cotton curtain on a rail between you and the Marine in the next bed, but you could actually see through the curtain. You could for sure hear the screaming and the yelling during the dressing changes, and then the anger and the ones that were mad at God. And through all of that, 8 months in that hospital, I heard all the things I would never be able to do. But a new doctor came to that hospital. He and I were reunited a few years ago in Garland, Texas. He actually performed the first surgery on me. The hospital ship, the USS Sanctuary, when they brought me in off the battlefield, he performed the last surgery. And I believe as well as my name is Tim Lee that God sent him to that hospital that day. He did not take my hip off. He simply cleaned up my wound, put me on a brand new antibiotic, and within 2 weeks I was making preparation to be discharged from that hospital, and I have not been back to a doctor or a hospital for anything directly relating to what happened to me on March the 8th, 1971 in South Vietnam. And I believe God had a plan for my life. And I don't want you to feel sorry for me at all. I love life. I love life more than most people. I went through the Alaska tundra on my hands and my bottom through some of the wildest, wickedest terrain in the world. 2 miles on my hands and bottom, shot a nearly 7-foot-tall black bear, skinned it out, and went back the same 2 miles. I'm in a wheelchair, but I'm not nearly as handicapped as I look. I still like to park in those handicap spots, though. A bunch of you do, too. I wanted to live. Someone said you never lived till you almost died. I wanted to live. I'm glad that my life was spared. I now have an opportunity every once a quarter to go to Parris Island where I did my boot camp. I'm going there next Sunday to speak to 4,500 Marine recruits. We've been doing this for quite some time, every quarter, brand new recruits, where I went to boot camp. And now these young men and women are being trained to go fight for us. I tell you something today. This is an important day. It's the day that you need to remember, you need to be grateful for. And those that are here that stood a little while ago to hear you say, welcome home. Well, thank you for serving. Thank you for being there for me. Out of all the plaques and awards and things that I've been given to over the past 44 years, there's a plaque hanging on my office wall that was given to me by a group of teenagers from Marietta, Georgia. Doesn't even have my name on it, doesn't even have who it's from. It just has these words. How can you stop a man who won't quit? And some of you are going through things in your own life. Some of you are hurting, some of you are in pain. It may not be a landmine explosion, but something else has happened in your life. You don't have to get angry. You don't have to become bitter. I'm telling you there's a way out. And I'm telling you today that God can help you find that way out. Thank you for letting me come here to Terrell High School today in this very special Veterans Day program. Thank you for being a friend to our veterans. God bless you, and God bless America.
I have two quick messages. One will be for the veterans, and then in a minute I'll have one for the student body. Veterans, on behalf of Terrell Independent School District and the Board of Trustees, thank you for giving all. Today is about giving honor and homage to veterans and soldiers. And in student body, I'm very impressed the way you came in, the way you've handled yourself with respect and given honor to our veterans. And that's all well and good, and it shows a lot of class about Terrell High School. But I'm going to speak for these veterans, and I've not had many conversations with them. But if you really want to honor a veteran, this is what you do. See, freedom isn't free. There's a cost that's been paid that you can sit in these seats. So if you really want to honor the sacrifice of our veterans, what you have to do is live the life that you were created for. You were created for an abundant life. You were created as light to a dark world. You were created for greatness. You were created to walk through the doors of opportunity, not hide from them. You were created to attack life. There are no excuses. The price has been paid on the battlefields across this nation so that you do have the opportunity for an abundant life. Honor these veterans by living that life abundantly and carrying their legacy forward. Honor their sacrifice. Dr. Solis.
Students, before we close, Mr. Juan Perez and a couple of these students from architectural class, they want to present our guest speakers with two woodshop projects that they had. So Mr. Juan Perez, if you would please like to present our guest speakers with those. Students of Terrell High School, as your principal, I'm very impressed with what I've seen. Teachers, very impressed with what I've seen. You represented us well, our community that is here, our school board, administrative team, veterans, distinguished guests, everyone here today, you've seen what Terrell High School is about. Students, I really appreciate the way you've conducted yourself is exactly how you're supposed to conduct yourself. Give yourself a round of applause. Guests and community members, if you would like to stay, we're going to have our band play music as we dismiss the students to head back to class. So, yes, sir. Hang on 1 second, please.
This a while ago, you go to our website, timlee.org, you find out what we're doing with the Marines. We were going to bring some materials to pass out, but we've got to take off here in just a little bit. I'm not going to be able to do that. You'll also follow us at Marine Tim Lee. And for the students, I left this part out, didn't do it on purpose, but Ron, the other Marine, Hollywood made a movie about his life. Tom Cruise played the leading role. It's called Born on the 4th of July. They didn't make a movie about my life. I was born on the 5th of July. But it doesn't make a bit of difference. Life is worth living. And no matter what comes your way, you can be successful. I appreciate what we just said here a moment ago. You can be a winner in life. Absolutely.
Okay, at this time, guests, I also want to let you know, as soon as our students head back to class, what we will do is we will guide you to the athletic complex where we will have a luncheon for you as well. So at this time, our math teachers, if you can please take our students back to class, special ed department, and also our aides. Also, science teachers, if you can please make sure our students head back to class at this time. Thank you.